All right, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whichever it is where you are when you're viewing this. This is the lecture for Thursday, July 2nd, I believe. Unfortunately, I've got, let me see. Yep, I did fix that. Okay, super. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to review what we've learned throughout the assignments in inline CSS. Then we're going to move on to the next set of things that we've got to do. And I'm not going to spoil that for you yet, but I will tell you the name is Embedded Style Sheets. And hopefully by the end of this evening, we will get to talking about what we call an external style sheet, a style sheet that is included on a separate page in your web server that will allow you to set up a standard CSS page for as many different pages in your company website, for example, as you might have. The one I like to say is if the University of Nebraska at Lincoln bought IBM, instead of being Big Blue, IBM would probably be Big Red, and they'd have to go in and change the background color and some of the things on every single page that's branded to IBM. So that would be a pain in the butt if you had to do it on every single page or through inline styles on every single page. But let's start with inline styles because they are a good tool to use when we want to do some very, very simple stuff on a static page. And we've seen a few of those already. You've seen that in both the schedule page that you built and this page, or this assignment rather, when you were putting a background color and a border around the three separate sections on your sound and music page, or sound and vision page. Wow, I couldn't even remember that. Now, here's what we're going to talk about first off. This is the next set of slides, which is 11, I believe. Yeah, because the next one is 12. And we're going to make this big, and we're going to flap back and forth between the slides and what we can see, as well as the CSS code. So we'll have several windows open at the same time. Actually, while we're talking about windows being open, when you're working on CSS files, if you're not doing inline, it's often nice to have a second window open so that you're doing the CSS file in one window and you're doing your HTML code in another. All you have to do is get up here in the gray bar, right click and say duplicate session and fill in your, whoops, guess what? I forgot. Oh, look at that. They're going to give it to me. So this is new to me. I've never not. No, it's not new to me. What am I talking about? Hang on a minute. Let's kill this one for now. And let's, wow. I thought I was somewhere else, to be honest with you. So we want a duplicate session. I just spent a while talking to somebody about logging into a Mac, and it's still in my head apparently. So Jay Blackmore is my net ID. We're going to hit the enter key. We're going to enter my password. There we go. So I'm going to CD to my public underscore HTML directly, just like you. Then I'm going to CD up one level for me, because remember, I keep all of my class information in a file. Oh, for crying out loud. That's separate. I was too busy talking to pay attention to what my hands were typing. So I'm in Summer 20. I want to go up one more level to CSS. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be utilizing some of these CSS files as we get later on this evening. For now, though, we're just going to go straight into, let's see, CSS1, I believe. So yeah, there it is. So let's vim css1.html. I can tell it's going to be a long night because I'm already making the typos. Remember, your type statement has to go up there as the very first thing. It's what tells the browser what to expect, basically. There's a little more to it than that, but that's good enough for now. We have a paragraph that is actually one of the first paragraphs in the book My Antonia. And basically it just is the first paragraph. It talks about setting up the story about meeting My Antonia and what they were doing. We have an inline style, color teal. And teal is about halfway between blue and green, basically. So if we come out to the web, whoops, I was back one. There we go, perfect. So that's what this looks like. It's just a regular paragraph, but again, we've seen these inline styles before. And the word teal is one of those 100 and whatever color words that are legal on the W3 schools. They're ones that have been set up to be able to be used by virtually any browser that's on the marketplace. I will also apologize in advance. There may be a train coming through. There was earlier. I would have gotten started a half an hour earlier. But we'll try and go on regardless of what the noise pollution is. So what we've done here is we've simply created a teal paragraph from the book My Antonia. Very simple, very easy. You guys have done more complicated stuff right from the very beginning as we were doing little bits and pieces of inline styling until we got up to the last assignment where we actually styled a complete page using simple inline styling. Let's go back onto the slides here for a minute. Yep, okay. I wanted to make sure I was in the right place. And I want to make sure I get this thing out of here. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is inline styles, embedded styles, and external style sheets. We should get to that basically by the end of this particular set of slides. So CSS means cascading style sheets. In a formal definition, it's a style sheet language used to describe the presentation of a document written in a markup language. So basically it says, we're going to make your hypertext markup language look cool. We're going to make colors change. We're going to do all sorts of funky stuff there and make it really look neat. You can read the rest of that. That's not that big a deal. So CSS and CSS style sheets are made up of rules. And those are property value pairs, but that will affect the way HTML5 elements are displayed. If we go back to that first example here real quick. This is the property color. We separate the property from the value with a colon, and then teal is the value. And the value can be a word like this. It can be a number if you're describing how wide you want a horizontal rule to be or something along those lines. So remember that inline styles have the attribute equals, they're enclosed in double quotes, it's property colon value semicolon. And that gives us this sheet with My Antonia's words in teal. So let's go back to this now. In this class, we're actually mixing CSS2 and CSS3 styles. We're not going to do anything that requires incredibly complicated things, but we'll do a couple that are interesting, I think. So the style attribute again, remember, style equals property colon value. You can have many more than one property value pair inside of an inline style. You just have to remember to separate the property value pairs with a semicolon, and that they have to be inside of double quotes with the style tag. And of course, just like we've spoken before, the inline style is part of that paragraph tag, and it will end when the paragraph tag ends. Now, we've talked about color before. In fact, I've shown you the W3 Schools page that will give you the information on the colors, the color names, the color properties, that kind of thing. There's actually 4 ways that we can talk about color. And the first is by the name, like teal, T-E-A-L, will specify to your browser to apply a certain color to whatever you're telling it to, the background of the page, or the foreground, the letters if you just use color. RGB triplets, red, green, and blue, those are decimal numbers from 0 to 255. So 0, 0, 0, separated by commas and a parenthesis. We'll see how this works in a couple minutes. Is black, 55, 255, 255 is white. Hexadecimal is my preferred way of doing it because you can adjust the numbers much easier and get a finer grading of color. Not that it shows the same on every browser, but it should be pretty darn close. Hexadecimal numbers are base 16, so they go from 0 to 15. And since we only have a single digit that we want to use, once we hit 9, instead of having 2 digits for the number 10, we use A. 11 is B, 12 is C, 13 is D, 14 is E, and 15 is F. So hex, all Fs, 6 Fs, FF, 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 becomes pure white. Finally, we have what we call RGBA, which is fairly new, but really cool. And that stands for red, green, blue. Anybody guess what the A is? It's called alpha transparency. And I really wouldn't expect you to guess if you weren't familiar with Photoshop and tools like that, or if you weren't an artist. Basically, the alpha transparency sets up how transparent or opaque your page is, or the color is on your page, rather. So if you do something like 100% opacity, or excuse me, 100% transparency, I always tend to talk in opacity rather than transparency, but that would be just invisible. You wouldn't see the color at all. If it was 0, then you would see only that color. Anything underneath it would not be available for you to see. So let's go on to the next one here. Now, these are the first 16 colors I had when I first got a color monitor. I could make any color in the universe as long as it was one of those 16. It was interesting. There was a lot of creativity going on with these colors that led to today's colors, where you've got, you know, millions upon millions of colors that you can see in a screen. But for the beginning, we only had those predefined 16. Now remember that we also have more than those 16. All you got to do is go through the W3 Schools and type color names, and it'll take you to that page I've shown you many times, which shows you each color and the name it's referred to. It should also have its RGB number and its hexadecimal number as well. So let's go back here, and this is that very first one that I showed you. This is the one we're going to color a paragraph teal. Now remember, when we say color, we're not talking about background color, we're talking about foreground color. So we're talking about the letters, the words, the numbers that we have in between the open and closed paragraph tag. Let's take this in a different direction then. Remember that that is just by the name. We can also define it by RGB. You remember when maybe some of you still do. Your grandparents may have an old color TV, and if you get up really, really close to the screen, you can see like these three dots in a triangle that have a red, a green, or a blue light. And by differing the amount of red, green, and blue that comes out of that, shoots out of that cathode ray tube, what happens basically is that specifies what that color for that triplet is. Remember though, if you get that close to the screen, your grandma's probably going to holler at you about, "You're going to ruin your eyes." That's what mine always did anyway. And I guess she might have been right. I'm wearing glasses now, I suppose. But if we're going to do red, green, blue, and come up with the color teal, remember what I said before, teal is half green and half blue. So a lot of times when you choose a custom color, that's the way you're going to do it. I can remember using these three numbers in the old days, if you will. But let's show you how we make that in real, or we make it real anyway. So if we're going to use RGB as our color format, we do color colon, that's our property. Our value here is RGB, and then in parentheses, 0, 128, 128. Remember, the RGB is a comma delimited list of three numbers between 0 and 255 for red in the first place, green in the second place, and blue in the third. It has to go that way. RGB. It's not RBG. It's RGB. Red, green, blue. And it's important for you to remember that. So let's take a look at what this looks like on the screen. So I don't have to worry about trying to copy paste into this Odin server. We're going to go ahead and do this. Whoops. It would help if I remember to hit the insert key, wouldn't it? And there we go. Now the paragraphs, because of the copy paste errors, look really funky, but remember that we will have that good old situation of your browser just truncating all that extra white space. So everything, that's blank from here down to here is just going to go away. All right, so we're going to save this real quick. And let's go over to, oops, that one is what we want. Let's hit the refresh. Boom. Now, you'll note that regardless of which way I chose here, RGB or color word, I have gotten the same color. Both of those paragraphs are teal, and they're both plain to see it that way. So let's go back and look at the hexadecimal way of doing things. What am I doing here? That's the wrong slide set. This is the right one. All right. So we've got that. We're in slide 10. Let's move on to talk about hexadecimal numbers. The most common way, and frankly, it's my favorite way, is using hexadecimal values. We convert the numbers, the 0 to 255 found in an RGB triplet, and we turn them into hex equivalents. Now, remember I told you hex is basically 0 to F. For a value of 16, we're talking about base 16 counting system. The reason we use decimal numbers is because we have 5 digits on our hands. Most of us have 5 digits on our toes. And that makes it easy for us to count by tens. We've got 10 tens, and that's 100, right? So what we're doing here for teal again is half green and half blue. So we're getting a specific number set up. If you look at the third bullet point, the hex value for teal is 00, which says I don't want any red at all. 80, which says I want halfway between 0 and 15, which is about 8. And in terms of green, and the same thing for the last pair in terms of blue. So it's pound, red, red, green, green, blue, blue. In this case, pound 008080. If we had wanted to figure out red in the RGB section, excuse me for a minute, would be 25500. And all red would be, of course, FF0000. All green would be pound 00FF00. All blue, by now it should be old hat to you, pound 0000FF. Wherever we want all of one color, those two pieces of the puzzle are Fs, or some number that's on the positive side of 0. That's how we create shades and tints of colors with hexadecimal numbers. If you have any old lamps in the house, you know, the ones that cast white circles of light on the ceiling, if you can get 3 of those and put them so their shades are right next to each other, and replace the white light bulbs with a red, a green, and a blue party bulb. Remember those? About 25 watts, if I remember right. The thing with that is you'll see basically a Venn diagram on the ceiling. And in the very middle where all 3 of those circles of light overlap, the light in there should be white. You can look up that on the web, I'm sure. So here's our third set, or our third paragraph, set with hexadecimal numbers. Again, it's the same bloody thing. Style equals quotes, property colon value, close it with a semicolon, close the double quotes, close the paragraph tag. Once again, we'll see this doesn't change the color. It just represents it in a slightly different way. And again, I want to come down here and insert, let's back that up and delete that. And you'll notice that I am utilizing HTML comments so that I don't have to try and copy, paste, or type everything right as you're watching. So I'm going to escape :right to save it. And we're going to go out to the show me page, which should be here. And bam, now we've got 3 different pages, or excuse me, 3 different paragraphs, but they're all the same color. It's just we've built them slightly differently. Now I'm not gonna spend too much time on the next one. RGBA is really cool, and you can play around with it if you want to, but for us, we probably are not gonna have any real need for transparency. If you want to, by all means, play around with it. That might be something that you could do for your semester project, is play around with transparencies and see what happens when you overlap colors, that kind of thing. So here's what we're doing with RGBA. Notice it looks exactly like the RGB up until we get to this last number. This last number, 0.3, stands for 30%. So our transparency level is 30%. We see a very, very, very light version of teal. To some people, it won't even look like teal, but it is. It's just lighter in the amount of color that you're giving to it. So it appears a little bit less than full bore teal. So escape :right. We're going to hit the enter key. And we're going to hit refresh. Now there's 30% transparency. Any less transparent, and people like me probably couldn't read it on your page without highlighting it. And if the people that are on your page have to do that to read your page, you lost the interwebs. So that's what happens when we use the alpha transparency. And if you put it at a 1 and you're just doing it for typing, putting it on words, I don't think it's really worth your while to do it that way. So let me get back into those slides again real quick. And let's see what we can do next. I'm not going to read this because we really talked about it and showed what it means, but I am going to mention the last bullet point there that says a transparency value of 1 means the color is solid, it's opaque. A transparency value of 0 means that you can't see the color at all. Okay, we just looked at that, so I'm going to skip over that again. And now we're going to talk once again about property value pairs. Whoops, I went one too many. Too many, actually. So again, as I mentioned before, the values that we supply for property value pairs can be predefined values, or they could be links for percentages, numbers. CSS properties can have one of a set of pre-existing values. For example, the float property, which we used all the way back in the About Me page, we did float left. Only has 5 possible values: left, right, both, none, and inherit. There is no float center. Links are percentages. 3M, EM, or 12 pixels. They are values relative to other things that you can see on the page. And M is equal to the element font size. Specifically, it's as wide as the capital M in a specific font. So basically 3 M's is 3 times the size of that font. They used to have an EX as well, an X, and that was basically an equivalent to the height of the letter X in a specific font. We really don't use the EX anymore. A pixel is one of those, triple pixels on a TV screen, or 1 pixel on your monitor screen right now. But remember that the resolution in monitors are different. So 1 pixel on my little laptop here that I'm using to record this can be way different than the pixel that an artist uses when he's creating digital artwork, or she is creating digital artwork. You can actually use inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, and picas, but those are absolute units, right? An inch is an inch no matter what we say. Same with centimeters and millimeters. But because screen sizes differ, we really shouldn't use those unless we're building a page specifically for something like a specialized printer, for example, that you print things out on, like a blueprint printer, perhaps. Now, here's what we're going to do first. We're going to learn about font family, just a little bit. Now, so paragraph style equals color teal. We know what that does, but we're adding a second property value pair to it. We're adding font family, and the font we're looking for is Palatino Linotype. The paragraph's the same, so we're not going to change anything there. But font family allows us to add our wish list of fonts for the page to be displayed as long as it's on that particular person's computer somewhere. So let's go back here. We'll have fun here in a minute, I think, just because. There we go. Oh, it would be nice if I could hit the insert key once in a while, right? So, boom, boom, mistake, colon, right. We're going to come back out here again. We're going to hit refresh. And you can see maybe the size of the text, the font is a little bit different. But if you're not familiar with it, you know, who knows what it could be. Let's see what the next slide is, and then we'll come back and talk more about this. Okay. So here's one of the big problems about using inline styles. If we want every single page in our website and every single paragraph on every single page in our website match that last paragraph that I put up with font family Palatino Linotype, that's a hell of a lot of changes that you have to make. So let's go do that. Now, again, I've already got this completed, and we're just coming in to kind of erase the comments out of the way. But each one of these paragraphs, to be the same as the one we saw before, has to have that in there. Now, again, Palatino is not really that different from Times New Roman, except in the height of the letters. And, you know, some people can't see that difference. So what I've done here is I've added the most hated font in the universe right now, which is Comic Sans MS. And even if you can't tell the difference between Palatino and Times New Roman, you should well be able to recognize the difference between Comic Sans. So I'm going to hit the, God bless it. I'm going to hit the insert key. There we go. We're going to add my insert back in, and let's get the this is why I'm glad I decided to do it this way anyway. Today is a typo day. Okay, so what we've got here again is 3 different paragraphs, all styled the same except for the one I put in Comic Sans, just to show you that it really does change something when we do that. So I've hit the refresh button. Can anybody see the difference there between the middle paragraph and everything else that we've typed? I think so. I absolutely believe that you can tell the difference between Comic Sans and MS. I think the controversy with Comic Sans started when somebody was fired and they received their notice in Comic Sans MS, and all of a sudden it blew up a few years ago. So that, if I remember correctly, is the story behind why Comic Sans MS is the most hated font on the planet. So let's get back here. We'll go down one more. Everything in those paragraphs had the same properties and values modified to be uniform. But it's a pain in the butt. How many paragraphs do you think there are on, let's just say, your favorite game site that has its manual online and everything else? If you had to go back and style each one of those as an individual inline style, you would be, you know, just typing up the first day's modifications from the devs by the time the game is 2 years old. It just doesn't work very well. Now, there's another way we can do this, which kind of makes it look like, well, it's going to make it almost an external style sheet, but it's only going to modify the page that it's on. And that's called an embedded style sheet. An embedded style sheet uses the style tag. Now remember, this is a tag. It is not the attribute that we have in our inline styles. So style equals is an attribute. That's inline styles. Embedded styles, pardon me, are a style tag inside of the header of our document. I like to put it as basically the last thing in there after, well, the last thing after the meta tag. We will come up with external style sheets before the end of this lecture, and we will see where those go and why those are important and how they're used. And we'll talk about what exactly cascade means. So a style rule takes the format of a selector like H1 or any tag that's out there, paragraph. And then inside of the curly braces, notice we've got an open curly and a closing curly. We make whatever property value pairs we need to style that particular selector in the way we wish it to look. So I'm going to pull this up a little bit because I like seeing a little more of what I'm going to do next. And we're going to hit on this. Now, we need to talk about comments. You've seen me play around with that HTML5 comment tonight a lot. But CSS comments are /* to begin it and */ to end it. Now these are multi-line comments, just like the HTML5 comment is. So you can wrap that around half of your CSS form if you're trying to debug things and find out exactly which CSS rule doesn't work quite right. Or it may just be that you're telling yourself and the people that come after you the rule below bolds text because they might not know about font weight. So let's take a look at some simple rules. You can change an H1, color it red. And this is pretty horrible. Don't do these, just like I said on tables, do not do horizontal rules like this. I'm going to show you the proper way to do an embedded style sheet and an external style sheet coming up really soon. This is just a way for us to get multiple information on one slide. Now, as a heads up, this last one for the paragraph is everything that we were doing in one rule set in an embedded style rule, and B, it's in a vertical format, which is the way I want you to do all your style rules. All right, it's easier for you to trace down what's wrong. It's easier for Stephen and I to grade your papers or your websites. So here's what we're going to do. Way up in the head, after the meta tag, but before we close the head and start the body, we are going to add an embedded style. And it's specifically what I just said, color teal, font family, Palatino, Linotech. We'll probably change that. Let's kind of change that to, let's do Comic Sans MS again. Now, the only thing that's in here, 9, 10, and 11 are paragraphs. And we've got plenty of others in there because I'm not going to start a new page. We're just going to play around with the one that we're working on. So anything that's just a paragraph is going to, and we'll do this. We'll color these green instead of teal. That way we can tell exactly what the embedded style sheet is working on and what the inline styles are working on. So let's go ahead and do that. Get back into, whoops, there we go. All right, we'll hit the insert. My first paragraph, my second, my third. And we're going to get rid of that last one because we don't need it anymore. Now I'm going to go all the way up to the top. Oh, and look at that. I don't even have it there. That's excellent. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the style. Whoops. We should not have that capital S. It's still going to recognize it. Now I'm going to close my style. And the first rule that I want to have out here, whoops, is P for paragraph. Those of you who know me or have been around me for quite a while know that I prefer putting my curly braces underneath rather than having them hang out on the right side. But we want color. That's our property. And I'm just going to do green. Okay. And then we want, font dash family. And we want Comic Sans MS. Now notice I am putting Comic Sans MS in double quotations, just as I did Palatino Linotype. If there are spaces in the name, quotations go around it. If there are no spaces, like Roman or Arial, then you don't have to include the double quotes. Now, the last thing I need to do is come over here, and there's my, oh, come on, you silly thing. There we go, close enough. So we've got paragraph, an opening curly brace, and that's next to your P is the braces. Color is green, font family Comic Sans MS. We close the curly, we close the style command. Now remember, that's not going to affect much else. But we'll talk about that when it happens. I think you'll be interested in it. So we're saving that. We're going to come right out here to, whoops, wrong one. This is the one we want. Nope. That's the one I want. So let's get that out of the way. And I need to get that back out from under my picture there. So this one's teal. And this one's teal. In fact, they're all teal up there. But now down here, remember that only has the paragraph tag. It doesn't have any inline styles applied to it. But this embedded style sheet with Comic Sans MS and the color green has definitely changed those for us. Okay. So that's really cool. And if you were running, you know, a simple little tiny page that just says mom and pop's grocery store or gas station store or whatever, and, you know, a little 25 people town, this would probably be a very good way to make it happen. You don't need a lot of styling if, you know, your page is not going to get constant hits, basically. Let's go back and see what else we can do here in the slide sets. Oh, I'm stuck in the slide sets. There we go. Now, inline styles and embedded styles are great when you only need a little bit of CSS. When you're only doing, you know, a static page for mom and pop's gas station out, you know, 5 miles away from the interstate. But again, if we have a site like IBM that's got hundreds, if not thousands of pages, and we wanted every page to look the same, we could use what we call an external style sheet. And what an external style sheet does is it actually allows us to specify one set of primary rules, and every page that subscribes to that external style sheet is going to utilize those rules in order to make their pages look pretty. Now, I have said, I think on a couple of these videos that we've done, that there is no link tag. That's true when we're talking about links to other pages. There is one place that a link tag is usable, and that is inside the header of our HTML5 page. So the link is an atomic tag, and what it does is it specifies what we're giving the HTML or the browser in terms of our HTML style sheet, the type, which is going to be a text file that contains CSS rules, and our href, or horizontal, wow. Our href is the same as every href we've done, hypertext reference. And that is, in this case, to a CSS file that is in the same file as the page that it is tagging, that it is styling. So what we've got here is we're going to use from our CSS directory a wow.css. And if I go down here, let's do this real quick. So I'm going to vim wow.css. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to add 3 new paragraphs. And our paragraphs color is purple, and the font family is going to be Comic Sans MS. Everything else up there is our normal CSS stuff. In an external sheet, it's kind of nice to add a char set, just like we did in the header of the HTML page, just in case the page that we're styling simply forgot to add that as a meta tag. But that's what we've got down there. So we're going to add the link tag to it. And I'm not. I'm going to type it out. What the heck? It can't take me that long, right? I am going to go ahead and get rid of the embedded style sheet here. Come on. So we're just popping it out for now. Now, remember what that's going to do to us is it's going to leave us, well, let's see. And we go back to this one and hit the refresh. And now down here, those last 3 paragraphs are no longer styled by that embedded style sheet. So we're going to do this with the link reference. And let's see if we can't get them to be purple in Times New Roman, or excuse me, Comic Sans MS. Start with a link tag. Oops, I forgot to press the I for insert. So the link tag, hypertext reference, you know what? I forgot. Relationship first. That's what happens if you use the if you get into something like that. By the way, I was in record mode there, visual mode. You can either try to hit escape a few times, or you can try doing talk, not pay attention to what I'm typing. My type is DEXT/CSS. And here's where I've got my href, and that is going to be in the CSS directory. / says I'm done with directories now. And then the name of it is wow.css. Okay. Now, that is located in the head. The style sheets that I have externally, I generally put in as the very last thing before I close the head. So let's hit escape again, :right, and we should see some pretty purple letters come up. And there we go. So let's close out this section, and I'll start this to processing, and we'll start another one in just a moment. So let's see what we got left on the slides. And that's just what I had when I showed you wow.css. This is the old-fashioned way. We've got 6 pages, but all of them have the same embedded style sheet on them. It's a lot of duplicate work, a lot of pain in the butt kind of work. The best way to do this is to have a single link tag in each one of the pages and reference the style sheet that you're going to use to style all of your pages in a family view. If you go to any Amazon page, for example, you know that you're still on Amazon because of the way it looks on the top and the left. That's what external CSS allows you to do. All right, I'm going to close this off for now. I'll see you in a couple minutes with the second half of the lecture, and I'll see you guys around 5:30 this evening for our regular Q&A.